Truth Unveiled here, and today I have some very urgent stuff to share with you. It has to do with Mr. Obama and how he's basically going to bypass the Senate in order to ratify the Paris Climate Accords and what this means for America and the rest of the world. Because if you haven't figured it out by now, Mr. Obama is trying to take over the world under the guises of the UN, and we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk more about the G20 Summit as well as the Paris Climate Agreement, so we can all see the bigger agenda behind all of this. But now I'm at the Washington Times, and it says White House defends Obama evading Senate on Paris climate deal. Do you know what this really means? Because what this means is that your lovely president is making decisions behind your back, and if you don't read between the lines, you're not even going to know exactly what he's doing and how this affects you in the plans for Operation Depopulation. But the actual article says that the White House on Monday defended President Obama's decision to enter into the Paris Climate Accord without Senate ratification, but stopped short of confirming a Chinese report that he would do so this week during his trip to China. Still, it would surprise no one if Mr. Obama and Chinese President Xi Jinping were to announce the ratification of the sweeping climate change agreement before the Sunday opening of the Group G20 Summit that is in China. And we're going to be talking more about the G20 Summit, and it's supposed to be held next week in China, and we're going to see exactly what that's all about too. But it says that the White House senior advisor Brian Pease said that the president has the legal authority to ratify the accord without the two-thirds Senate vote required for treaties. He said that the pact negotiated by 195 countries back in December, and this is talking about the Paris Climate Accord, is merely a, quote, executive agreement. No, Mr. Obama does not have the legal authority to do that whatsoever, just like Mr. Obama and no president out of their right mind has the legal authority to sign in these executive orders whatsoever. Yet these president and your lovely government have been doing this for how many years now, and it's only leading up to what? Martial law for America. So why are they continuously doing that and breaking the Constitution, which they never followed to begin with, because you never had rights to begin with? But it goes on to say that, quote, the president will use his authority, what authority, that has been used in dozens of executive agreements in the past, to join and formally deposit our instrument of acceptance, and therefore put our country as a party to the Paris Agreement, he said at a White House press conference. He noted that both presidents announced back in March that they would, quote, seek to formally join the Paris Agreement back in 2016. That's a process that is quite well established in our existing legal system, and in the context of international agreements and international arrangement, Mr. D said. There is a category of them that are treaties that require advice and consent from the Senate, but there's a broad category of executive agreements where the executive can enter into those agreements without that advice and without that consent. Oh my goodness, do you see exactly what's going on here? Do you see how your government is trying to justify and ratify all of these draconian laws and all of these draconian measures? Because you may be sitting here and thinking that, oh, well, what's the big deal with the Paris Climate Accords? Oh, how does that affect me? Oh, it's about climate change, even though climate change isn't actually a real thing. And I'm going to leave a link for my video below that explains more of that. But you may be thinking, what's the big deal with this? The big deal is that they're making this an international problem. They're making this a worldwide problem, and they're trying to spoon feed us the agenda and say that, oh, well, because it's a worldwide problem and because it's an international treaty, that gives Mr. Obama the right to do this when it in fact does not. And you're going to see exactly why this is such a big deal and what this has to do for all of us, because I'm telling you there's something way more sinister going on here, and you're going to see the whole truth and nothing but the truth in just a second to come. But then the actual article goes on to say that speculation about the ratification soared after the South China Morning Post reported that two leaders are, quote, set to jointly announce their ratification as early as Friday. And like I said, whether or not they actually sign it into office or not, the fact that they're even talking about it and giving us this speculation to begin with months after Mr. Obama's supposedly leaving office, that is some serious red flags that are waving indeed. Then it says that the report cited sources who said that, quote, senior climate officials from both countries worked late into the night in Beijing on Tuesday how do we know that they didn't already sign it into office? We don't know because they're not telling us anything anyway. But then it also goes on to say that the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon issued a plea last month for world leaders to accelerate the ratification of the process, which lost steam after the agreement was announced in December. Once again, why are they urging world leaders to come together like this? Why are they asking world leaders to do this? Are they merging into a one world government? Is this their plan of merging everything into a new world order? Is this their plan of having the new world order at the Illuminati with the 240th year? Is that what's about to take place? Let's find out. This is the actual report that comes from the South China Morning Post, and as you can see, the headline says that China and US to ratify landmark Paris climate deal ahead of G20 Summit, sources reveal. Now, of course, we don't know when they'll actually do it, but whether they do it now or within a few months from now, the fact that they're even talking about it should be ringing some serious alarm bells indeed. Now, it says move may tip momentum and bring accord into force at a worldwide level. And like I said, notice how they're turning it and making it a worldwide issue. But then it says that China and the United States are set to jointly announce the ratification of a landmark climate change pact before the G20 Summit early next month, the South China Morning Post has learned. Senior climate officials from both countries worked late into the night in Beijing on Tuesday to finalize these details, and a bilateral announcement is likely to be made on September 2nd, according to sources familiar with the issue. Now, like I said, this is what they're telling us. Never believe a word that they're telling us, but it's something to be on the lookout indeed, whether they do it in September or October or November or December or whenever they decide to actually do it. They've been planning this for a long, long time. Now, it says President Xi Jinping will meet his U.S. counterpart, Mr. Barack Obama, for the G20 Summit that's supposed to be in China 2 days later on September 4th. And we're going to go more into the G20 Summit. We're going to talk more about it and what the G20 Summit is really about, because there's a lot they're not telling you. And later on, we'll also talk more about the Paris Climate Accord together so you can get a better idea of what it's really talking about. But see, they just want you to think that, oh, it's talking about climate change, and oh, it's a pact that's from 195 countries that's talking about lowering the average temperature levels, and oh, that's all it's talking about. But is that all it's really talking about, or is there something else going on? And why do all of these countries need to approve something on such a massive level as this? Is there something else that they're not telling us? It's only a matter of time. But it says that the pact agreed by representatives from 195 countries in Paris last December, or December 2015, aims to keep the increase in the worldwide average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius on pre-industrial levels. Again, that's what they're telling you. Countries began the ratification process back on April 22nd of all days, and by Tuesday, 23 nations had joined, but they account for just 1% of the emissions. Now, what I thought was also very interesting and suspicious indeed is when this article goes on to say that the treaty will enter into force only after 55 countries representing at least 55% of emissions ratify or join the deal in other ways. China had said early that it would ratify the accord before the G20 Summit in September, and this is according to a report from South China Morning Post. In June, the U.S. said that it would work towards approving the deal before end of the year, with the White House keen to seal a key part of Obama's environmental protection legacy before he leaves office in January. Since when was your government about protecting the environment? Last I checked, all they do is poison it with all these chemtrails and everything else, just as we've been seeing. But then it goes on to say that U.S. law allows the nation to join international agreements in a number of ways, including through the authority of the president. No, it does not. Just look at the Constitution and it'll tell you otherwise, but they don't care because they're going to keep making these draconian laws anyway. Now, I'm at the actual G20 website. As you can see, this comes from the G20 Summit that's supposed to be taking place in China, but I just wanted to give you a better idea of what the G20 is really all about and the bigger purpose behind it. And then later on, we're going to be talking more about the actual Paris Agreement and the climate accord itself, so you can get a better idea where all of this is leading up towards, because remember, there is an agenda behind everything. Your government and your UN are not telling you what they're really about to do. But it says about G20, it says G20 was initiated in 1999 and consists of Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, Mexico, the Republic of Korea, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Turkey, the UK, the US, and the EU. Before the outbreak of worldwide financial crisis in 2008, I wonder who caused that. G20 meetings of finance ministers and central bank governors were held to discuss international financial and monetary policies, reform of international financial institutions, and world economic development. The first G20 Leaders Summit was held back in 2008. In September of 2009, the Pittsburgh Summit announced G20 as the premier forum for international economic cooperation, marking an important progress in worldwide economic governance forum. The 10th Summit was held back in Turkey back in November of 2015, so about a few months ago. See, this is exactly what I mean when I say problem, reaction, solution, because we know darn well that those Zionists at the very top and all those elite, they're the ones who triggered the financial crisis of 2008 to begin with, and then what? Order out of chaos. How did they cause the order out of chaos? By then making up summits like this one, and you're going to see exactly what these summits are all about. And notice how this summit came around the same time as Mr. Obama entered office. Pay attention to these things. Then it says that some guest countries in the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, or the WTO, more alphabet soups, the Financial Stability Board, and the International Labor Organization, and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD, were also invited to attend the G20 Summit. Why would they need the United Nations to join this meeting whatsoever? What could be the real purpose behind all that, unless there's something that's bigger going on? Then it says engagement groups such as B20, L20, and T20 also convene to prepare policy recommendations for the G20 Summit during the year. Now real quick, I also wanted to go over with you some of the leaders who are going to be attending the 11th G20 Summit. And once again, this summit is supposed to be taking place from September 4th through September 5th of 2016. Now this comes from the actual website of the G20 Summit, but rather than actually go through a list of it, I'm going to show you the actual pictures of who's attending and where their positions are in world government in just a second to come. Now, rather than list them out, each and every one, and rather than read them out, I thought it'd be better to actually show you in person. So here I am in Wikipedia right now, and as you can see, these are supposed to be some of the attendees at the G20 Summit in just a few days. And notice the people who are supposed to be attending, like Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany. Isn't she the same one who's been pushing immigration in Germany? Isn't she the same one who's bringing in all those refugees, and they know darn well that they're doing it in order to do what? Cause chaos in Europe? Is she the same one that's going to be there at that attendee? Of course she will be. And then we also have French president who's also been pushing martial law in France like no other. Then we also have the Argentinian president as well as the Australian prime minister. We even have the Brazilian president, the Canadian prime minister. Of course we have the Chinese president Xi Jinping. We already went over these two. We also have the Prime Minister of India who's supposed to be in attendance, the President of Indonesia, the Prime Minister of Italy, as well as the Prime Minister of Japan, the President of Mexico, and then of course we have our favorite, the President of Russia, Mr. Putin himself, who's been getting a whole lot of attention in the media, and who's been getting a lot of attention in Western media because they really want you to believe that Russia's starting this war when we know that it's all propaganda, rumors of wars. We know that the Zionists, they fund both sides of the war. Then we also have the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, according to this, the President of South Africa, President of South Korea, the President of Turkey as well, and then the Prime Minister of the UK, the President of the European Council of the EU, and then the President of the European Commission, and of course, our favorite Mr. Obama, the President of the United States. Now, this is the actual Paris Agreement that we're going to go over, and later on we'll be talking more about the Kyoto Protocol as well, and we're going to be going over more documentation so that I can then tell you and share with you and disclose to you exactly what this is leading up towards. Now, it says at the Paris Climate Conference, or COP21, back in December 2015, 195 countries adopted the first ever universal, legally binding worldwide climate deal. And it says the agreement sets out a worldwide action plan to put the world on track to avoid dangerous climate change by limiting the worldwide warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius. The agreement is due to enter into force in 2020. Do you really believe a word this is telling you? Do you really believe that, oh my goodness, there's really climate change and we need to do this by reducing the climate? No, there's something bigger going on. And then it talks about the key elements because it says that the Paris Agreement is a bridge between today's policies and climate neutrality before the end of the century. And then it says mitigation, reducing emissions. Now see, this is what they're telling you, but what they're not telling you is, well, what are the effects of this and what is this going to lead up to? Because if they're trying to do this, does this mean that they're going to impose taxes on all of us? Let's keep going. Because it says the governments agreed that a long-term goal of keeping the increase in worldwide average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. They also aim to limit the increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius since this will significantly reduce the risk and the impacts of climate change. And then they said on the need for global emissions to peak as soon as possible, recognizing that this would take longer for developing countries. Then they say it's to undertake rapid reductions thereafter in accordance with the best available science. Then they say that before and during the Paris conference, countries submitted comprehensive national climate action plans, or INDCs. These are not yet enough to keep global warming below 2 degrees Celsius, but the agreement traces the way to achieving these targets. And then it talks about transparency and global stocktake, and then it also talks about adaptation and how governments agree to strengthen society's ability to deal with the impacts of climate change and provide continued and enhanced international support for adaptation to developing countries. Then it talks about loss and damages, and it talks about the role of cities, regions, and local authorities. And I thought this was very interesting because it says that the agreement recognizes the role of non-party stakeholders in addressing climate change, including cities, other subnational authorities, civil society, and the private sector, and others, and how they're invited to scale up their efforts to support actions to reduce emissions, build resilience, and decrease vulnerability to the adverse effects of climate change, as well as uphold and promote regional and international cooperation. But when it says promote regional and international cooperation, the reason that I left that highlighted is because what they're trying to do is that they're trying to use this as an ends to a means in order for what? More surveillance. That's all that it's for. That's all that they're trying to do, because now they're trying to say, oh, this is a worldwide problem. Oh my goodness, this is a national problem, even though we know there's no such thing as climate change. It's not real. It's just made up and conjured by your government's head because they want national control and international control so that they can use that as an excuse to say, oh my goodness, we all need to team together to fight off this threat, and the way to do that is by promoting regional and international cooperation so that we can spy on you even more. And that's exactly what they're trying to do, as well as support each other under the guises of climate change to do it. I am at the actual website from the UN. As you can see, I'm going to be talking more about the Kyoto Protocol, and this is from the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And the reason I'm here, and the bigger question that should be on our mind, is why are these world governments, why are they so keen to coming together in order to fight such a threat? Why are they so interested in this stuff? Why is the UN and the EU and all those others, why are they coming together? What is really going on here? But it says that the Kyoto Protocol was adopted on the 11th of December 1997, and this actual website talks more about the Paris Agreement and the so-called threat of climate change. But then it says, owing to a complex ratification process, it entered into force back on February 16th of 2005. Currently, there are 192 parties to the Kyoto Protocol. In short, this protocol operationalizes the convention. It commits industrialized countries to stabilize GHG emissions based on the principles of said convention. The convention itself only encourages countries to do so. So what they want to do is stabilize and reduce certain emissions. And it sets binding emission reduction targets for 36 industrialized countries as well as the European Union. Overall, these targets add up to an average 5% emission reduction compared to the 1990 levels over the 5-year period of 2008 to 2012, the first commitment period. So basically what this protocol does is that it binds countries that are agreed to it, and it binds them into this agreement as well as all those who live in these respective countries and these respective nations, whether they have a say in it or not. Which means we the people have no say in this whatsoever. We the people, no matter what country that we're in, have no say or agreement to this whatsoever. Sounds very draconian and totalitarian to me. But now I'm back at the UN website once again, and this actually talks about the Paris Agreement, and it says the status of ratification. Now it says that the Paris Agreement was open for signature back on April 22nd, 2016 at a high-level signature ceremony that was convened by the Secretary General in New York. And I've talked more about this in my video back in April of 2016. Now it goes on to say that at that ceremony, 174 states as well as the EU signed the agreement, and 15 states also deposited their instruments of ratification. Another question I have is, why are all of these countries getting involved with this? Then it says, as of the 23rd of August 2016, there are 180 signatories to the Paris Agreement. Of these, 23 states have also deposited their instruments of ratification, acceptance, or approval, accounting in total for 1.08% of the total global greenhouse gas emissions, according to them. Authoritative information on the status of the Paris Agreement, including info on signatories to the agreement, ratification, and entry into force, is provided by the depository through the UN Treaty Collection website. You can access that here. I'm going to leave all the helpful information in the description box so that you can have access to all of this yourself, so you can see with your own two eyes what's about to take place. Now this just gives some preliminaries about the Paris Agreement. It talks about the official background, and then it talks about the arrangements for signature. I'm not going to get into all of this, but then it talks about the entry into force, and a lot of this we've already talked about, such as at least 55 parties to the convention have to sign and account for at least an estimated 55% of the total worldwide greenhouse gas emissions in order for it to be effective and force. But like I said, why are they pushing this at such a time as this, right before Mr. Obama is supposed to be leaving office? Very interesting and suspicious indeed. Now this is the final document that we're going to be going over. As you can see, it comes from the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and it has to do with the adoption of the Paris Agreement, and this talks about the Conference of the Parties from the 21st session that was conducted from November 30th all the way to December 11th of 2015. Now it is about 32 pages long. I highly recommend you read it on your own time. I'm going to leave the PDF in the description box, but it says the proposal by the President, and this was the draft decision from the COP21, or the Conference of the Parties. It talks about recalling the decision on the establishment of an ad hoc working group on the Global Platform for Enhanced Action, and then it talks about also recalling Articles 2, 3, and 4 of the Convention, further recalling relevant decisions of the Conference of the Parties, and then it talks about welcoming the adoption of the UN General Assembly resolution, which even talks about the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Isn't that talking about depopulation? But let's keep going. Then it says that recognizing that climate change represents urgent and potentially irreversible threat to human societies and the planet, so to speak, and thus requires the widest possible cooperation by all countries, because that's what they want you to believe, and their participation in an effective and appropriate international response with the view to accelerating the reduction of worldwide greenhouse gas emissions. And there's always a threat, isn't there? Then it says also recognizing that deep reductions in these emissions will be required in order to achieve the ultimate objective of the convention, and emphasizing the need for urgency in addressing climate change. So always an urgency need, there's always a threat. And then it talks about acknowledging that climate change is a common concern of humankind. Why are they always making this into a worldwide problem? As if they're trying to make you into the problem. And then they say that parties should take action to address this threat and respect and promote and consider the respective obligations on human rights, the right to health and the right to indigenous peoples. Why don't you try telling that to your government who's spraying all these chemtrails and all these GMOs in your food? Do you really think they care about you and people in general? No, they do not. And they talk about addressing specific needs in developing countries because they're doing a good job of that when it comes to these food shortages, when they're the ones causing the food shortages indeed. Then it talks about stressing and emphasizing the need of it, the urgent need of this, and also ratifying the Kyoto Protocol that we already talked about right here, and stressing the need to accelerate such a program. Then it talks about recognizing urgent needs and emphasizing what benefits. And then the report goes on to talk about adoption itself. But the problem with this and what you need to be looking at is how this is going to affect you if you're in one of the 195 countries that this is supposed to be implemented in. Because how are they going to afford all of this? Where are they going to get all the funds for this from? Where are they going to get all the money from this from? They're going to get it from people like you and me. They're going to get it from taxpayers like you and me, which is also unconstitutional, by the way. The IRS is just one great big scam, but moving on, see what they're going to try to do with this. And the reason that they're pushing this is because now they're going to bring in the need of worldwide taxes, because now they're going to tell you, oh my goodness, because of climate change, well, we need carbon emission taxes, and we need this tax, and we need this unconstitutional tax, and we need this pointless tax, and you're going to be taxed for it. Then they're going to tell you that you're breathing in too much air. We have to save air for Mother Earth. There's going to be more taxes, which means more slavery, and there's going to be more international taxes. But what this is also going to do is that it's setting up and getting ready for the one world currency, the new world order, the one world government. And to do that, they need a one world currency, Operation Depopulation. Because according to the elite and according to Mr. Henry Kissinger and all those other elite Zionist terrorists at the top, they say that the world is overly populated, even though that's not true. And they say that, oh, for the sake of Mother Earth, we need to start reducing the population. And this is just one of the many ways that they're going to do that, Operation Depopulation, which is why they met on Earth Day, so to speak, to discuss these things back on April 22nd with the United Nations. Just look at the Georgia Guidestones if you don't believe me, and you'll see that the elite are getting ready for massive depopulation on a scale like never before. And of course, we also know Mr. Obama and how he's trying to take over the UN and become the head of the UN for what the new world order, merging everything together, merging all of these worldwide governments together. But the question is, do you see it? I hope so. Please seek Yahuwah and his true son Yahusha, because it's only a matter of time until all of this stuff becomes enforced, coming to a police state near you. But this is Truth Unveiled here saying peace, love, and as always, shalom.